Hello and welcome back to Russ Plays Games. My name is Russ, and as you can see, we're sitting back in front of the paint station one more time. So today, what we're gonna do is, we are going to put these little black spots onto the barbarian's little loincloth here. I do need to run a bit of red up on him before we do that. So, let's go ahead and get to it, shall we? So, last time when I told you that I was going to kind of finish up the chair a little bit, I don't know if you can kind of see it, but I put a little bit of a green highlight on the little scroll work in the front and on the sides and then on the back top of the chair there. Okay? So I just kind of went ahead and did that really fast and just kind of was like, hey, here we go. That's cool. The reason for that is because I wanted to make sure that when we put all of this stuff, when we have a lot of that stuff going, we want to make sure that when we're putting some of these things together, we want to make sure that, that stuff stays where it's supposed to. Dry brushing is not exactly an exact science. So the biggest thing that you want to do when you're working with certain types of paints and different things like that, you want to make sure that you do the right things with it. Okay? Should have looked at his loincloth before I hit the record button, but that's okay. Sometimes you just gotta fix stuff on the fly. For some odd reason, my tip is not holding together like it should. I'm not sure why it's not. Get a new One other thing I did towards the end of last time, I don't think I put it on, but I went ahead and colored. I don't know if you can really see it, but there it is. These three little white bands on his loincloth there. I went ahead and put those up where they should be. And that way, we can make sure that everything was supposed to be right where it's supposed to be. Alrighty. So now, okay. This is not exactly an exact science. We're basically just kind of looking to put a few random dots on the loincloth, just in random places. We just want it to be the indication of something there. Because it's not it's just gonna be a random jumble of dots is what you want it to be. So you don't want to follow any distinct pattern. You just want them to be as random as they can be. Kind of like that. And so when we end up with little spots on the loincloth. It's kind of hard to see, but trust me, they're there. And just like our big friend over here, just like our barbarian friend over here, who, you know, his spots are much more randomized. You know, like he's just only got like 3 or 4 spots right here, and then you can see an indication of a spot up here. And the point is that it's supposed to be an animal's skin, and that animal had some kind of dots on its fur. And so that's what we're going for when we go for something like that, is we're going for just a speckled appearance where it looks much different. Now, for the fur. This is the tough one. So, let me grab, where are you? Shoot, what did I do with it? There it is, okay. One thing I wanted to mention, before we jump into the rest of this, I want you to pay attention to my hand position. I don't know if I really mentioned this in the first couple of episodes, and I probably should have. And I might have mentioned it, but I want to kind of come back to it. But basically, what I do a lot of times when I'm doing when I'm working, okay, is I spend a lot of time paying attention to where my hands are, okay? Now you'll notice that this thing has a nice bell shape, okay? And it has that nice bell shape because it gives you a nice firm grip that you can have. Plus, it also gives you a way that you can pinch, okay? And that's usually how I hold this, is I pinch. Usually I'm pinching somewhere around in here, okay? And if you watch my hands, if you go back and start paying attention, especially after I picked this up, you'll start noticing that as I'm moving around, it's much easier to actually move the miniature to where I need it to go, so that when I go to dab a paint or when I go to do something, I do that. Now you'll notice also that I hold my brush very much like you'd hold a pencil, okay? So instead of though being like this, where you'd have the pencil, where you'd have it like where I have my callus here, okay, I have it more like this, okay? And then what I tend to do is, a lot of times, is you'll see me when I go into to make a paint, I will put my fingers up against like this, or I'll put it up against my other fingers. I don't, it's kind of hard to tell, but I have a little bit of a shake, okay? And it magnifies a lot when I have to do certain motions, especially when I have to do motions like when you need to be able to go in close and, do something with the miniatures themselves, and so it's really tough to sometimes it's really tough to explain, but basically how I try to look at it is I'm I'm trying to be as steady as possible. So when I'm doing this, and I'll kind of get up here so you can kind of see, when I'm doing this, I'll get up and you can see how I'm using my ring finger, okay, to steady my hand so that when I come in to make the paint stroke, my paint goes on nice and fluid, okay? This is something that a lot of people don't really take the time to explain to people when they are painting. They just kind of go in there and they're like, hey, just go in and paint. Yay. And it can be difficult because you may not know exactly where and how to hold onto a paintbrush, okay? And so having something like this where you have somebody kind of explain it to you, it can be a lot easier to look at. And I actually, as I was editing part 10, just recently, I was paying attention to where my hands were when I was watching, and I was like, I don't know if I've ever really talked about that too much. I should probably sit down and talk about that a little bit. Just so that you guys can kind of understand where I'm coming from, and why sometimes when I'm concentrating on, something, I'm trying to make sure that I'm getting that stuff together, okay? And so I just want to make sure that you guys understand that when I'm, that when I'm doing something like this, that I want you guys to pay attention to not just the paint. I also want you guys to pay attention to things like the position of my hands and fingers and various things like that, because it just makes it that much easier on me. Okay? And I've actually had a lot of good feedback from people saying, hey, I never really knew this technique, or I never really knew that. And so it's gratifying to me to know that this has been helpful for some people. Might not be for everyone, which is fine. It's not for everyone. But if you've never really painted anything before and you're kind of new to this whole thing, A lot of times this kind of stuff can help you start because it can give you a way to do it. And I would say that hold it in a way that makes you feel comfortable. Okay, if this is not very comfortable for you because you're not used to painting that way, then don't then ignore what I'm saying to you. Okay, do whatever feels right to you. Okay, because that's really kind of where this boils down to is where, you know, how does it, how does it make you feel, and how do you do when you are painting and doing all of this stuff? Okay, because everybody's going to have a little bit different way of painting things, and way of holding the brush, and way of, doing things, and it's kind of born out of practice. You know what I mean? It's not. It's something that you're just going to have to develop yourself. And if this helps you develop that, great. If it is hindering you, then by all means ignore it and do what you do, because if that's easier for you and it's much better and it's much more comfortable, then go for it. No one ever said it was a one-size-fits-all hobby. Okay? That's one of the things that I've been trying to, kind of do when I do these, is I've been trying to let people know that it's like, this is not just like what I'm doing here. This is not going to be for every single person who's doing this stuff. It's going to be different for every person. So, if you've got a way that you've been doing it and you love doing it, then great. If that's the way that works for you, awesome. Keep on going. Don't listen to me. But if I've got some techniques that you've never considered before and you try them out and they work for you, awesome. If you try them out and they don't work for you, then don't use them. Okay? So, what I'm trying to do here now is I am attempting to get the tops of the fur and the bottom sticking out, because that's going to be kind of where that's where the fur is going to be the best, if you know what I mean. That's where it's going to kind of be, that's where we're going to target, okay? The rest of it will be done with like a brownish color, because we're going to be putting, because it's more of a wrapping. So if you look at his boots here, okay, you can see down here at the bottom, like, that's the actual boot itself, the leather boot, and then you've got this fur up here at the top and kind of sticking out, and then you have these straps. Well, when they designed the miniature, okay, and you can kind of see it better on this one, is here's the top end of the fur, and then here's the bottom end of the leather sticking out down here. And then right in the middle where it's still black, you can kind of see where there's some wrappings going around the foot, okay? And so what we're doing now is we are trying to get the fur on the top and the bottom so that when we go back to do the wrappings will be just that much easier to grab because we're pretty much almost done with them. And once again, kind of like with the loincloth and with the feet, it's going to take a little bit of time because we have to get back in and amongst all of these parts. Okay. And right now it doesn't matter if you get a little bit up on the bindings because we can either tidy that up with black or we can move it however we need to. It's not that big of a deal. We just need to try to get as much paint on there as possible. That's the biggest thing. Okay. Now, let's give me for 2 seconds. To see it isn't. It's really hard to know what they're looking for. All right. Once I get the shade on, I think it'll make a lot more sense. Alright, once again, I'm concentrating because I'm just trying to make sure that I get the right parts. It's a very thicky paint. You have to be very careful with it. Okay. Once again, because we're going to be putting a bit of shade on this guy a little later, we probably don't need to be as neat in terms of like making sure that every single thing gets done, just because down in the little recesses we're going to end up with a lot of shade in there, which will end up kind of helping to cover some of those little tiny mistakes. So we won't necessarily need to worry about that too much, let's put it that way. Biggest thing we're going to want to do is just make sure that we get as much paint on the biggest parts as possible. That's what we're going to want. Okay. Alrighty. So, that out of the way. Alrighty. So, now what we're going to do is we're going to take this Moonfang Brown. Okay. What we'll end up doing is we'll end up coming back over this with the shade in a little bit, and it's going to make it look just that much better. Okay. Now, I know it seems kind of trite, And I know I'm probably going to get some flack for this, but if you want, you'll notice that there is something on our intrepid hero back here. It's right there. And while it's not apparent as to where it is on the figure, you could, because the thing you have to know about men, okay, is women, your breasts are more up front like this, okay? For us men, our nipples are actually more out here, okay, on the sides. So if you're going to add in, and it's kind of hard to see because it's almost in shadow, but it's right there, okay? So if you're thinking, I might want to add a nipple to this guy, or I might want to do something along those lines just to kind of add in that much more realism, go for it, okay? And I'll kind of show you where to put it. It's kind of hard because it's going to be kind of hard because it's hard to see exactly where everything is, but once I show you, you'll be like, oh yeah, okay, I get it. You kind of have to think about things like this if you want to do that, because there are certain ways, and there are certain miniatures that you can buy where they are actually like naked. Some of the Reaper miniatures are like actually naked, and they have a lot of detail on them in terms of anatomy. So if you're thinking that that's something that you'd like to see, I can show a couple things where I've kind of done a few. I think I've only done like 2 or 3 where I've done some things like that, but I haven't actually done, and I'll be honest with you, I've only done like 1 actual naked female figure, and she turned out okay. Didn't quite finish her, and her wings fell off. It was a succubus from Reaper. Mostly wanted to do it for the actual challenge of it, rather than like, ooh, it's a naked figure. It's more like, I want to see if I can actually paint this and make it look pretty convincing. So I might show that off here at the end, but if I do, just know it's a metal miniature, and it's actually got quite a lot of interesting stuff. So you just have to be wary of what you have and where it is, and I know it's kind of weird to say, but it does help to kind of have a little bit of reference, especially if you're going to do what I did. Because one of the things that you have to remember is that not every single person looks like our barbarian friend over here, okay? Or even this barbarian friend, okay? Some of them actually do have a lot more hairiness to them, because that's kind of how our bodies are. And so that's kind of how it works. So if you're going to put if you're going to do it, it's really hard to see, but it's kind of. I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to show it off. It's basically the muscle, the pectoral muscle comes down like this, okay? So it comes down about like so, and right where it comes down at the bottom, the nipple is about right there, okay? So if you're a female, it's probably good to have a reference image like this. If you're a guy, just look at yourself, okay? And you'll know that it's right where the pec muscle comes down, okay? And that's where you're going to put it. This thing doesn't actually have that much detail on it, so it's really hard to be 100% precise on exactly where it is. Okay, so it's not like it has like a three-dimensional representation of where, where the guy's nipples are. Okay, and there's probably some girls out there giggling. There's probably some guys out there rolling their eyes right now. And you know what? Alrighty, and we're back. So, sorry about the non-warning there. I wasn't really paying attention to where we were and what we were doing, and so it kind of cut out as I was talking about it. The last thing I'm just going to say on it is this. Whatever you choose to do, your business. Okay? You want to make it so that you have, so that your figures have nipples, go for it. If you don't want them to have nipples, don't worry about it. Okay? It's not like people are going to look at it and go, "Whoa, where'd the nipples go?" Okay? It's not that big of a deal. Alright? It really isn't. So, you pick, you choose, you do you. Okay? No one is going to, yell and scream at you because, you didn't do something. And as I've said before, if they do, you tell them I told you to tell them to go F off. Heck off. Right now I'm painting the rock under the barbarian's feet here. Just getting this because it's just easier now, because once I get done, then I can actually put the shade on, and then I don't have to worry about, oh no, I got some paint where I didn't want it. It's very crucial during this stage to avoid as much bleed over as you can possibly get. Okay, I'm probably going, wait, what's bleed over? Well, bleed over is when you have paint in areas you don't want it. That's bleed over. Okay, and it's just easier to avoid it at this stage than to try to repaint. Because what you're going to end up doing is just going back over it and making it super huge. Just makes a mess. When I get done, I will show you a couple things that I did, just to kind of some of the stuff that I've done recently, and then I'll kind of tell you that I'm going to get to them. It's just a matter of when. Now, normally, in some of these, I would go all the way down the side. But with these guys, I figured I can keep their integrity without not doing too much to them. So what I'm going to end up doing is I'm going to end up painting the side red with the flag red, just to kind of give myself a little bit different, feel to the characters and different things like that. I just figured it would be easier in case I need, something says make sure that it's this color or that color. I was especially thinking of it for the sword and sorcery stuff. Mostly because with sword and sorcery, it's kind of dependent upon whether or not the character is blue or green or whatever. And so knowing what, because you can actually change the difficulty by utilizing one or more different colors. So like if you wanted to make things easier, you could put in some green enemies instead of blue enemies. If you want to make things harder, you can put in some blue enemies. You can add in some other green enemies, blue enemies, that kind of stuff. If you have more than the normal number of people or whatever. Just kind of however you want to do it. Alrighty. So, while we're kind of waiting for that to dry, I was going to kind of show you that I painted up a couple of people because I wanted to sort of I wanted to do a couple just to make sure that I had some good reference images because I don't have these guys as references. So before, this guy was just on top of this waiting to be painted. I went ahead and painted him up. So this is a Gondorian soldier, okay, and I just painted him the way that I will paint a Gondorian soldier if and when we get around to it, okay? And again, I did it as a reference just to kind of make sure that I know what I'm doing. And then I also painted up an orc, okay? This is a Mordor orc. And I need to go back and put some stuff on his little helmet there because I kind of went a little crazy. But basically, here again, what I was trying to do was, get him, paint him up in such a way that I could actually make him look decent, okay? And So, because I have um, an orc spearman and I have an orc bowman, okay, and I made a paint scheme right here, okay, where I took this. I bought this for the Moria Goblins. This is called Faded Jade from Folk Art. And I took some of this Thicket. It's a real dark green color from Folk Art, okay? And I put a little bit of the Faded Jade in the front here, put the Thicket up top here, and then I mix them together and use that as the orc's skin. Okay, so it's this kind of a palish green color. Okay, and so here again, it was just a case of sitting down and actually making sure that I was putting the right stuff in the right parts. Okay, to make sure that you guys understand that it's like, and I'll explain how we're going to mix that up and how that all works when we get to that point. Okay. So, here's what we are going to do. I'm going to grab this. Actually, I'm going to grab the Dragonhof Nightshade first. Because that one needs to go on before the next one. Okay. That's good enough. Alright. And now, we're going to do Circumcipia. Okay. This is going to be a lot. You can already kind of see how much it's warmed up the skin just since putting that amount on. And when we do the highlight, when we come back and do the highlight, we'll end up looking at it from that standpoint of how does this, how do these highlights work? Okay. Now, by putting this on the loincloth, it's really gonna darken up that that white. So we're gonna have to come back and redo the white, okay? Which I'll show you how we'll do that a little later. But you can kind of see how we're getting good definition on all of the muscles and everything, which is what you want in a case like this, okay? Because what we're going to end up doing with that, again, is we're gonna be using that to our advantage when we go back to do the highlight. Okay. We have to kind of make sure that we're getting the right stuff. Okay. Now here again, if you don't want to paint the sword or anything like that, it's totally up to you. You don't have to if you don't want to. Get out of here, you stupid lie. No one cares about you. So as you can see, our guy now looks like he has a very orangish tan, like a certain president of the United States used to have. Which is fine. It's all good. Okay. And let me actually grab. I'm running out of Acrax, so I'm gonna have to get some pretty soon. There we go. Now, if you want, you can shade the hair, but since I'm just leaving it black, it's not that big of a deal. So what we're gonna do is if you look at this dude's black hair, okay, across the top up here, you can kind of see where the light sort of plays off of his hair. It's got a sheen to it. That's because our hair, human hair, has natural oils in it, okay? And so, to get that, what we end up doing is we take a little bit of this and we're just going to kind of highlight just a bit of the hair here and there. The problem is the shade hasn't quite settled in every single place, so I'm kind of running out of ways to have it work. So when you get a nice little brush like that, see, it highlights the individual strands without destroying the black underneath or making it look like he's got gray hair. Okay? And so that ends up being our dry brush there. That finishes the hair. Now, for like we did before, we are just going to come back over and we are just going to highlight the major parts of this. Okay? So what we're looking to do, all we're looking to do, is just kind of highlight some of the raised portions of our gentleman here. Okay? So like on his back, we're looking for just the muscles that are sticking out the most. Okay? Or the parts that are sticking out the most. Okay? Highlight the knuckles. Just about like so. Highlight this brow ridge. And then we're going to highlight bridge of the nose and the cheekbones. Pretty much just about like so. Okay? Just adds a little bit of definition to the face. I'm going to highlight a little bit of his pec right in there. Okay, and then we're going to highlight top of his kneecap and the sides of his thigh, about like so. Okay, and that's all we're going to do, really. It's all the highlight we need, because that's just going to be enough of a highlight. Now, you can even come down here and kind of, get some of the toes. Like that. Stuff like that. But you don't want to do too much, because then you'll start ruining the illusion of the shade, and you'll start making it look like he's got two different flesh tones. Okay? Which we don't want to do. Okay? Now, the only other thing that we need to do is we're going to re-highlight this this white trim, okay? Because we want it to stand out, because you can see how bold the white trim is on his loincloth on that picture. Okay, so what we're doing is we're just going back and we're just going to touch these up. There we go. So now we've re-highlighted his thing. Now, to do the fur trim, we're going to basically do the same thing that we did with his hair, which is we're going to take our dry brush, okay, and let me see here, I need to make sure. And so when we end with that, where the fur kind of sticks out a little bit more. And that's pretty much it. He's pretty much done as of right now. The only thing I didn't do that won't take me very long is I just need to go and get the get this little trim here for the lion's mane, and that's about it. So I'll probably do that off camera, and when we come back, I'm going to probably end up. I've been saying that I wanted to do Sir Ragnar, so I think we're going to do Sir Ragnar. And so yeah, we're pretty much done with our barbarian friend here. One last thing I wanted to kind of show was I got this in a D&D set. It was like a little advent calendar, and you kind of like punched a hole in it, and like you would pull out the miniature that was inside, and this was one of the miniatures that was inside. And because I love playing the Marvel Universe role-playing game, I thought this guy might be kind of cool to have as sort of a Iron Man type figure. And then if you can see, it's kind of hard to see, but basically, like I put there's like a blue jet flare, metallic jet flare down at the bottom, and I painted this guy mostly with metallics. In fact, I think he's all metallics except for the bottom. And so this is like smoke coming up, and he's like jetting up out of the smoke, and then like I put like the kind of blue metallic going through it to show that it was sort of like a jet flare, like he's cruising up. I was not sure exactly what I wanted to do with him, how I wanted to paint him, or anything like that. So smash that like button, hit subscribe, drop a comment below, let me know what you think. And we'll go from there. We'll just kind of come back on the next one, and we'll just kind of continue forward. So thank you, and have a wonderful day.